Hi, this is Carla King with the Author Friendly Podcast, a consumer's guide for self-publishers in audio format.
Market research, get your craft figured out, connect with readers, obviously maybe connect with some other authors in there too, and then start really pushing the marketing.
That was this week's guest, Bryan Cohen of Best Page Forward, who I've known for a few years and I've really admired his work. Best Page Forward is the done-for-you marketing people, he says. And just because you're a great writer doesn't mean you're a great copywriter. This is why you need to hire somebody like Best Page Forward or get special copywriting training. In this episode, you'll hear about the importance of the hook. We also delve into the magic of keywords and other metadata that helps readers find your book on Amazon and Google search engines. We learn secrets for getting your book listed in more Amazon categories. We learn about the selling paragraph. We learn about so much. It's not all about writing, it's about marketing. So please enjoy this episode with Best Page Forward's Bryan Cohen. Hi, Bryan. Welcome to the Author Friendly Podcast.
Hey, Carla. Thank you so much for having me.
I'd like to start with what Best Page Forward does.
Sure, of course. Well, we started a few years ago, noticing that there was a need for authors who are not really big fans of writing things like the book description that goes on your sales page online or on the back of your paperback or hardcover book, that synopsis, that summary, whatever you want to call it, the blurb, which is an incorrect term, but people use it anyway, because blurb is technically the quote you get from other authors. But anyway, whatever you call it, we have started this service where we do it for you. We take information that authors provide us and we use our Best Page Forward system to create a description that is just the kind of thing that gets readers to lean forward in their chair, get them really interested. Whether it's fiction or nonfiction, you still want to just entice those readers and get them to go and click the buy button like we're all hoping for. And we're the done-for-you marketing people. We love to create these. We've done over 1,200 of them, and it's been such a fantastic situation getting to peer inside of over 1,000 different stories or informational books. It's very cool.
Yeah, I bet it is. And you get to call the best, synopsize the action, and you know what readers want. It's really a marketing skill, isn't it? I know a lot of authors, including myself, feel like I'm a writer. I should be able to write my own book description, my own author bio. I should be able to collect the right blurbs for my book. But it's a very different skill, isn't it?
It is. It's more of the kind of skill you'd need in something like poetry, where every word matters, the sounds of the words matter, and it's also a matter of distance. You don't have distance from your own book. You feel like there are so many important aspects you need to include, and when you're writing a 150 to 300 word book description, it's so hard to say no to that part of your brain that wants to include everything. And so getting someone else to do it is helpful, but there are also certainly ways that you can create that distance for yourself so that you're not going crazy and wondering why, as a writer, you can't quite pull off these 300 words.
So how do you get distance? Do you have to put down the book for a few months or something?
As if that's possible in our fast-moving, self-published world. I wish it was sometimes, but I know that we have a lot of to-dos and we can't take that time necessarily. So what I recommend doing is that for fiction, you set down a list of the main conflicts in your book. So for romance, usually the number one conflict would be, are the guy and the girl going to get together? In the thriller, is the detective going to solve the mystery before the next victim becomes him? Or for fantasy, will they stop the crazy dragon army? Who knows? I like to think of conflict as the main character or main characters want something, but something is standing in their way. And so for the romance, it could be the guy and the girl want to get together, but their families hate each other. And so figuring out which is kind of the number one conflict, and then basing your description not off the 80,000 words that are in the book, but off of that conflict is a much better starting point, a much saner starting point.
It is. And when you start to talk about your business, you write blurbs. I'm sorry, I'm never going to call them blurbs again, I promise. Right?
Carla!
And you also teach copywriting for authors.
Yes.
How long does it take to teach us to use that part of our brain?
It's a matter of kind of levels of 10, right? It's a Richter scale in a way. Teaching the basics, I think, is pretty easy. I've been fortunate enough to teach over 500 authors various levels of copywriting, just the hooks or the entire description or the ad copywriting. And I think that the basics are pretty easy to get under your belt. I've heard there's the 10,000 hour rule, of course, of becoming a master of something. But there's the 20-hour rule, which is it takes about 20 hours to learn the basics of something. And I definitely think that you watch a few hours of videos, you read a bunch of descriptions, and then you do descriptions on your own. You'll eventually get to those 20 hours and you can get the basics. But it's going from bad to average, average to good, good to great. It's a lot easier to get to average or good than it is to get to great. So I think that good can be good enough, certainly, to get more sales. It's about improvement, getting instead of 5% of people to buy who visit your page, 10% instead. And eventually maybe you get to 20%.
100. Never.
100%. Every single person who visits your page buying.
That's the goal, isn't it?
It is. It is the crazy goal. But I think that it's difficult to learn to become a master. I think it's challenging, but definitely within everybody's wheelhouse to learn to become pretty good.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people that's why they throw the money at you to do this instead of take the additional costs and time to learn it themselves. Can we talk about pricing? What does it cost for me to hire you to do a book description or a book description for a series of books versus taking the course and learning how to do it myself?
Currently, we have a package deal of a book description, the HTML code for making that book description look really nice on Amazon, the Amazon ad headlines, so about 5 headlines that you could use, a variety of headlines that you could use on Amazon for your Amazon Marketing Services ads, and a sample Facebook ad copy for $297. So that's $297. We turn that around in about 4 weeks. For a little bit more, there's a rush package available to get it in 2 weeks. And we do a bulk discount for folks who decide to buy 3 to 5 or more. And we actually recently changed our pricing, so I don't know how much that'll be yet. It'll be more, but it'll be less per description.
More in bulk. Yeah, less money per book.
Exactly.
Bulk.
I always try to be very transparent about my business, and we're all learning. Everybody in the author business is growing their own author businesses. We're trying to figure out, do I price my book at $2.99, $3.99, $4.99, 99 cents? Do I keep it there? There's never one true rule, even within a single genre. So it's fun to be able to share this stuff and to be kind of working this through live on the air.
You talked about putting your headlines and ad copy on Amazon and Facebook. I want to delve a little bit into metadata and keywords because that's an important part of creating a book description. Do you want to define metadata for us and tell us a little bit how it gets worked into the description?
Absolutely. So metadata, and I'm, not a data scientist, so we'll probably have someone sending an angry email, but it's essentially code that gets indexed along with your book when you publish it. And that code contributes to how your book is found on Amazon, which is a very large search engine for buyers, and on other search engines like Google, like Yahoo. For instance, one of the books that was kind of my experimental book that was connected up with a course before I really had dived into self-publishing was a book called How to Work for Yourself. And that was a book that's been downloaded hundreds of thousands of times. It was a perma-free book on Amazon. And for the title, which is the biggest part of the metadata, How to Work for Yourself, if you searched it on Google, I showed up something like number 5 or 6. I assume if you searched it on Amazon, it was probably number 1 or 2. And so in that case, the metadata that was connected with that book was really, the title was really standing out in a big way. Subtitle is another opportunity to really have some strong keywords, strong metadata connected with your book. And then Amazon specifically, the other platforms work a little differently, have a different number of keywords, but Amazon allows you to essentially tie 7 keyword or keyword phrases to your book. And so when you're coming up with the idea for the book, these are the kind of things you need to think about. I don't actually subscribe to the method where I feel like you need to stuff your description full of keywords in order to influence the metadata. I think the biggest influences are the title, the subtitle, and the 7 keywords. Amazon does not index words that you put in your description in Amazon itself. Google does. If you put a funny name in your description and you Google it, it'll come up on Google. But if you search it on Amazon, it won't come up. So there's like different things to consider based on what search engine you're trying to please the most. But I find that when you're writing a description, going for aesthetics and going for convincing the reader in that very moment is more important than convincing the computer. Different people will have different opinions on that, but that's the way that I have worked.
Yeah, and they work differently. So keywords, like for me, I'm an adventure travel writer, would be adventure, travel, women, motorcycling, scuba diving, right? And
exactly.
So if my title contained any of those words, the title of my book, that would be awesome. If the subtitle contains it, it would be super awesome too. If my book description contained those keywords, that would be even more awesome, right? So kind of work those in to the description. Does that keep you from really making an impact sometimes with the description, because you really do have to put those keywords into the description?
If I were writing one of yours, Carla, certainly adventure would be a word that would be used in a very natural way. Women would be used in a very natural way. One of the reasons I have a paragraph built into all of the descriptions that I write called the selling paragraph, which is towards the end of the description, it's because I want to include some of those adjectives, some of those keywords. The selling paragraph is a sentence that says what the book is and a sentence that says why you'll like it. So let's say it's Romeo and Juliet, to just pull one out of my head. Romeo and Juliet is a time-honored classic tragedy written by the great William Shakespeare. And so you'd have what it is, and then you could say, if you like star-crossed lovers, which could be a keyword, iambic pentameter, which probably not as good. But I love iambic pentameter because I'm a big Shakespeare nerd. And classic literature from the bard himself, then you'll love William Shakespeare's doomed teenage love story.
Right.
And so if you pull things out of that, love story, star-crossed lovers, Shakespeare, so many of those keywords are naturally baked into that paragraph.
Yep, that's
Whereas
true.
If you're trying to just adventure women, women adventure, motorcycle women, if you try to squeeze all that stuff in, people's BS meter is just going to go
Mhm.
off, and then they're going to feel as though it's not as genuine.
And you can put those keywords as categories. Amazon especially has
Mm-hmm.
different categories for books that are different than the Bowker Bisect codes.
Yes.
Like when you delve in, I'm always amazed when I go into Amazon Advanced Search and I look into the romance category. It has so many different
Mm-hmm.
and very, very specific niche categories. And because you can put 7 categories, you can assign 7 keywords to your book, right?
It's 2 categories that you can officially assign. Amazon has connected up. Certain keywords will get you into a category as long as you are in the above umbrella category. If you say dogs is a keyword and you have a pets romance book and you're trying to get into the pets romance category, if you're in sci-fi and you say dogs, it's not going to get you into pets romance. But if you're in romance, when you say dogs as the keyword, there's a page where it lists all these keywords, then you'll get into pets romance. So you have to almost choose your categories strategically in order to make sure you get into these subcategories. Now, you can also just email Amazon KDP support, giving them the whole category line: Kindle store, greater than sign, romance, greater than sign, pets romance. Copy all of that string and send it to them. I've seen people get into 10 categories that way.
Wow. That's a great tip. Thanks, Bryan. So back to book descriptions. We kind of turned left on metadata, but that's so important, I think,
It
in
is.
every aspect of writing and marketing your book. So what do you write the most? What genre, what authors come to you the most often? Is it romance authors? Is it nonfiction authors?
I would say it tends to be mostly romance. I think there's more romance books out there than any other category, so it makes sense. We get a lot of mysteries, whether it's cozy or historical. I would say romance generally is probably number 1, and then mysteries are probably number 2. We're looking to push into more nonfiction. We've written hundreds of nonfiction descriptions. It's not like we haven't written any, but I think that fiction authors, novelists, identify as novelists. I don't think nonfiction authors always identify as nonfiction authors. They're entrepreneurs, or they're financial coaches, or they're self-help gurus. They don't say that all of them combined are nonfiction authors. So as a result, it can be more of a challenge to necessarily reach out to all of those different niches. But that's just me thinking out loud.
Yeah. Well, you have a feeling for what's going on because you have been an author for how long now?
So I started by writing nonfiction back in 2010. It was actually a compilation of blog posts. I had started blogging back in 2008, which is scary to think that was 10 whole years ago.
I know.
Where does the time go? But I think that was kind of my first foray into it, was trying to earn more money off of the writing I had already done on my blog. And I really fell in love with publishing. I really fell in love with self-publishing. And I started with nonfiction, but I had been a playwright before that. I had been a comedian before that. And so I loved writing sketches. I loved writing scripts. And so, and I'd written some short fiction before in college. So I said, well, let's go into fiction. And so as a result, I have a 7-book series of superhero novels. That's my Dark Souls, the viral superhero series, the Dark Souls being the first book in there. And those have done fairly well. It's actually a relaunch. I had originally launched it as something else. And so that's a whole nother thing to get into. But
Oh, isn't it?
I think that, well, I'll come back on and tell you all
Okay.
about relaunching. But
Yeah, because I'm doing that myself with a couple of
ooh,
books. Yeah.
nice. We can talk. We can
Good,
talk.
good. All right.
There's a lot to go into that. But yeah, I think that it's been awesome to get to write so many different genres, reference and how to, and fiction. And I have the pen name Casey Lane, which has done fairy tale novels and novellas. And I think that that has really informed all of the copywriting. That's really informed. It's actually, I think, made me a better writer as far as creating stories are concerned, because now I've seen 1,000+ stories
Yep.
and what I think is strong and what isn't, and what works as the best hook, and how to write a book based on a really strong hook. So that's been, everything has helped everything else.
Well, that's true. I mean, if you know what a good hook is and you understand the archetypical stories and characters, then you are more easily set up to write a good story. I hadn't thought of
Absolutely.
that. Start with the book description and then move on from there. Wow.
There's a famous story. Well, maybe it's not so famous, but it's famous to me. There's an author, Adam Croft, who is a psychological thriller and mystery author. And he actually has spoken about this on a couple of podcasts. Maybe you should go bug him. So Adam had written a half dozen or more novels to that point and was doing fairly well, but he decided, I'm going to write a standalone novel based off of the hook. He decided to write the hook first. And as a psychological thriller, would you murder your wife to save your daughter? And very intense and scary, and people loved it. He put the hook on his book description, his ads, on his cover, and ended up selling 6 figures of just the one book, self-published.
Wow. That's amazing.
I think that we sometimes get things wrong. We sometimes say, I have written the book, let me figure out the marketing.
Yep.
But if you can figure out the marketing and then write the book, maybe you start with a stronger foundation.
Wow, that's food for thought. Definitely.
I try to make sure people are thinking after these interviews.
You know, it's true. I mean, we don't think about it. We have this impulse to write. Everybody's like, I have this impulse to write this book, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's no reason you can't just stop and go, okay, what's the book description? What's the category? Who's my audience? In my self-pub boot camp, I always say that's the first thing is go to Amazon advanced search, know what categories it's in, and then start connecting with your readers super early, because maybe you think you have a certain kind of book and your readers are going, no, these aren't the kind of characters that I like to read about. And you've got it wrong. So marketing, you know a lot about marketing. In fact, you are the co-host of the Sell More Books show and podcast. You want to talk a little bit about that?
I would love to. Obviously, it's nice to promote podcasts on other podcasts. Yeah, the Sell More Book show is a news/marketing show where we actually cover 3 recent tips and 5 recent news stories in the industry every single week. I think we just posted episode 217, so that's 217 consecutive weeks, 217 straight weeks of news, learning what's happening. Lately, there's been the reviews disappeared, even on the Harry Potter books, and then came back, and all sorts of craziness. There's been stuff with scandals of words getting trademarked and people trying to enforce those trademarks on titles and all sorts of craziness, but also really great stories of people having big success, people finding strategies that work for them that really start to bring in the income they're hoping to get from all of this wonderful publishing stuff. So we cover all of that sort of stuff every week. And what it really comes around to, I think, we have a lot of things that come up in a common way. And what you just talked about, doing the market research, knowing that you have an audience to write to, is such a huge step. Getting that understanding of craft and knowing that the book you put out is going to be really strong, connecting with your readers, of course, via email marketing. I think email marketing is one of the biggest ones, of course, but you can obviously delve into things like social media. And then figuring out, all right, now I'll do some advertising. Now that my ducks are in a row, now I'll spend some money on this. Those are kind of the things that just keep on coming up. And then doing it in that particular order. I've just seen so many success stories of the people who figure it out in that way. Market research, get your craft figured out, connect with readers, obviously maybe connect with some other authors in there too, and then start really pushing the marketing. Because if you start the marketing first and you don't know what you're doing, well, that's not going to be helpful. You build your email list up, but maybe you don't even have anything to pitch yet. Well, that's some money down the drain, probably. Yeah. So it's the right stuff in the right order, and waiting to spend that money, the big money necessarily, until you know you have your foundation set up.
And the big money is editing, it's book design. A lot of people sink at thousands of dollars down through book marketing services that just don't work if you're not really targeting your audience. And I think $297 is a good price for a big part of the missing piece of marketing work that I struggle with all the time. Maybe one of these days I'll take your class. I have been tempted because I certainly write enough books that it would save me money taking your class, because otherwise I'd be throwing you like thousands and thousands of dollars. Wouldn't that be awful?
It would be so awful for you, but it would be great for me. No, I think it's not even just that. It's about the skill you maybe want to work on and want to learn. A lot of authors, we have some clients who just say, there is no way I want to spend the time on this. Take this, I'll buy a 10-pack, I'll buy whatever, you just keep doing them. I don't want to think about it. So we a lot of our clients who end up buying multiple descriptions, that's kind of the way. But we love new students in the courses, and just, you know how you share testimonials of people who are happy. I love to share testimonials of just the copy, the hooks that people have written in the course, because those are just so fun, and seeing how people have taken the advice and have run with it, and it just makes you feel like a proud papa, you know?
Yeah, it does. Well, not a papa for me, but
proud mama, proud parent. I just wanted to say papa.
You don't hear that. You've got your daughter's how old now?
She probably, by the time this comes out, she'll be a year and a half old.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you've given us a lot of great tips already. Let me back up. I really wanted to ask you, how do you create a book description? Do you need to read the whole book?
Great question. You know, going even further back to when we talked about having that distance, it's actually better that we don't read the whole book, because then we'll be in the exact same boat as you guys when you're trying to write your whole book after reading your whole book and do all of that. So we actually just have some very simple questions we ask. If you have an existing blurb, we'll take it to look over. If you don't, no big deal. I would say 40 to 50% of the descriptions is just numbers off the top of my head, so they could be totally wrong. But 40 to 50% of the descriptions we get are for launches, so they don't necessarily have a blurb for a new book. But we take the answers to the questions you guys submit us, and then we work with that. And if we need more information, we email the client. But usually that's enough to go on, and we know the genres, pretty much all the genres at this point pretty well. And so we use that knowledge. We use what we get from the client, from the author, and then we run with it. And it's very rare. We actually don't even get that many requests saying, hey, you got this wrong. And we hear a lot more often, it feels like you read the book. And we didn't, but we have enough to go on to create really strong marketing copy.
Excellent. Good. It's all about the questionnaire, the questions you ask us, right?
Yes, absolutely.
You've given us a lot of great tips in the half an hour that we have. And before we sign off, first I want to ask you where we can find you on the socials. And then if you have like one huge, amazing, essential tip that you can give our author listeners, that would be great too.
Absolutely. So you can find me and my company at bestpageforward.net. And you can find Best Page Forward if you search in the socials on Facebook. If you want to join a big group of authors who are trying to work on their descriptions with other authors. The Selling for Authors group, I may even change that to the Best Page Forward group to get all, brandy about it. But I think that if there's a tip I have, it's that you can always change your description. You can always sub in one line for another. You can write as many lines as you want. Sometimes suggest 15 to 20 lines of the really important ones, 15 to 20 versions of the headlines, of maybe the first line of the description that introduces the character, so on and so forth. You can always have different versions. It's not like a regular book where you write one version and you edit it like little bits and pieces. You can totally throw something completely different up there. You could take a description using ideas that you get from this podcast, and then you could do it from a completely different podcast with someone else talking about copywriting. Play around, because you never know what's going to convert best until you try different things. And so test, try different stuff, have fun with it, make it an exercise, and then just see how it goes.
Great. Thank you so much, Bryan.
You're so welcome. I really appreciate you having me on.
So that's it for now. I hope you'll listen in on the next episode of the Author Friendly Podcast. You can find the show notes at www.authorfriendly.com, and you'll also find links to places you can find me on the socials. Also, free resources like my Consumer's Guide for Self-Publishers with reviews of all the tools, services, and products you'll hear about on this podcast. And hey, if you like the podcast, I'd appreciate a quick or a detailed review on iTunes or Stitcher. It helps a lot to float the podcast to the top so more authors can find it. All that and more on authorfriendly.com, and a preview of what you'll hear next week too. Signing off till then, thanks for listening.